Omarion Hampton, 6'1", 226 pounds, a big power back, physical runner out of North Carolina. Some people have got him talked into that first round. I'm joined by the fantastic Matt Price of DLF. Matt, do you think there's a world where we could see Omarion Hampton creeping into that first tier alongside Ashton Jeanty?
Not for me. I mean, I understand it. There's if you look at the size, he's got more prototypical size than Ashton Jeanty. There was some buzz at the combine about some GMs preferring Hampton to him, but to me, there's enough things that Jeanty does much better than Hampton. That to me, there's clearly a tier there. Now, if Hampton also gets like top 15 kind of draft capital, maybe we have to have a consideration and break ties in terms of landing spot and things like that. But as a pure player, just looking at the film, just looking at the stats, to me, it is a clear tier break between Hampton and Jeanty for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's that ability to translate immediately into NFL, that physical running style. I think he loves getting north-south. He is an explosive athlete that gets up to speed very, very quickly. I'm definitely a big fan of him. If you haven't subscribed, though, you want to hear more rookie content, we are profiling every single fantasy relevant player from this year's draft class. Hit the subscribe button below. You will not regret it. Moving across to the stats, Matt, as you can see, those last 2 years, over 1,500 yards on the ground, plus adding over 200 yards in the receiving game. Do you think there's a question mark over his receiving ability, or are you comfortable that he could be a true three-down workhorse in the NFL?
I would say that I'm comfortable with this pass catching ability. I think he's going to be effective on screens and swing passes, especially. I'm not sure he's necessarily that deployable offensive weapon where you're going to have him out there running routes and things like that, but he doesn't necessarily need that. I do think he's less of a plus skill set than it is for somebody like Jeanty. So,
yeah, I think I sort of have my running back prospects in 3 buckets. I have value add receiver, competent receiver, and then can't catch, basically. And I think that the 2 buckets at either end are pretty small, and most backs are in that middle bucket where it's like, they're not going to get flexed out wide. They're not going to be a focused part of the receiving game, but they can catch checkdowns. They can catch, simple angle routes. They can be involved in the screen game. And I feel like that's Hampton. I feel like he's going to be able to see probably like 30, 40 targets a year, add enough to not be a problem, but he's not going to be one of those superstars that's, adding 80, 90, 100 targets a year as such on top of that rushing workload.
Yeah, he's to me, he's a straight line sledgehammer. That's kind of how I describe him. He does have that surprising jump cut. You have that listed on the screen there with a bunch of question marks. I do think he has that jump cut and some lateral agility, but he's primarily going to make his money with power and contact balance. I will disagree. I don't know if you want to transition, Rich. I'll throw it back to you, but I'll just transition to the impressive vision part you have on the screen there. I do disagree with that a little bit. I sometimes on film you see a little bit of lack of creativity in his run and in the vision. There are multiple instances on film where you can see him run straight into the back of blockers. So we talked about the versatility of Jeanty in a zone blocking scheme versus a power scheme or gap scheme, and I do think Hampton is going to be a lot more successful on a team that runs more power gap than they do zone blocking. So I think he's somebody who's going to benefit really well from well-defined running lanes. So I have a little bit of a downgrade from him there on the vision.
Yeah, I guess this is where I want to be able to write like 50 words on the screen and, have to succinct it and keep it to short little tag notes. But I think that for me, I love his vision in space. And I think his vision in space is good. And I think he's good once he kind of gets to that second level. I do get what you're saying. There are times where, he is this is the gap you're going, this is where you're going kind of thing. I think sometimes with some of those zones where it's a case of you're running to a point and you've got multiple, bend, break, snap, as we used to coach it. I don't know if that's how they call it in the NFL. But he doesn't do that as well. And I think that's sometimes it, he doesn't have that elite vision where he sort of can set up defenders, bide the time to allow his blocks to go and then blow through a hole. But I think once he's in the open field, I think he runs the space very well. And I think that is an impressive trait of his. On the agility thing, I agree with you. I think his jump cut's good. I think that the lateral agility, I do have a slight question mark. I think that there are times when he doesn't. I think it comes with the bulk. It comes to the size. There's not that kind of lateral movement ability where once he gets going, he's just running in a straight line. And I wonder if that's potentially sort of slight of the vision issue, where it's not a case of he can't see the gap. It's just a case of I'm moving, I'm not slowing down, so I'm just going to keep going, rather than I've not got that ability to stop on a dime, break into a different gap because a gap suddenly appeared, sort of thing.
Yeah, I actually, that's a really great point. Maybe he knows his strengths and his strength, his power and contact balance, right? So he's not going to mess around with the lateral stuff, trying to make defenders miss. Like you said, he's a bit of a one speed, a kind of a long strider. He doesn't really look like he can vary his foot frequency so much to make those kind of subtle, quick cuts at speed, right? But everything else he does when he's in the open field is a marvel, honestly. So I think he's a true 3-down back. He's just not quite on the level of somebody like Chenti.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, it's just the wealth of quality running back options that we're talking about him in this second tier. I think if he was last year, he'd have been, in a tier of his own, and probably 2 or 3 tiers ahead of anyone else in that class.
Sure,
but it's just, unfortunately, the wealth of options we're being given this year that he slightly drops.